Hi, hello, welcome back. Welcome back to YouTube and my bioenergetics channel. My name is Depersonalization, and today I want to continue with this series on Reichian Characterology. To give you a little background, we're in the midst of a coronavirus epidemic, pandemic here in the UK, and everyone's on a sort of semi-lockdown. And I was kind of thinking, well, regardless of this, okay, I have to stay in all day and whatever, and got some clients and this kind of thing on Skype, but I thought I could still continue. I like to continue my work really, so I thought I'd continue along. And let's look this week at, we've just got two left now. Character type number 4, the dreamer, basically. This character type was originally known as the schizoid or unwanted child. What happened with Reichian Characterology, excuse me, I'll look at my notes. But what happened with Reichian Characterology is that, Reich created these character types back in the 20s, but some of the names were so harsh that he gave people, possibly because he himself was most definitely in the psychopath category, was that, they were pathologizing, ridiculous, totally over the top. And it's really, in many ways, has, I don't want to lay a big trick, but it's kind of contributed to the fact that characterology never massively took off, even though it has incredible potential. So let's take a look anyway at the dreamer. And before I start on it, if you're really interested in these characters, we cover them in greater detail, plus a lot more, workouts on how to deal with this kind of character from a bioenergetic level in the series Bioenergetics for Journey in the second half of that year-long course. So if you're interested, do check that out at bioenergetics.org.uk. But let's continue along with the dreamer. The first thing to say really about the dreamer is a couple of things to say, but the basic pattern of behavior that they have is to escape. When you look at these character types, what you'll see is that, it's kind of limited, as all of these patterns are occurring in very early childhood, really from conception right through to about 1 or 2 years of life, usually the first year of life. For the rigid types, it's a little bit later on, but the others all very, very early. And that you're kind of limited in what you can do when the shit is coming in. You're kind of limited in what you can do. But the characteristic of a dreamer is to escape. They can't physically escape, so they escape into their mind. They escape into, just not really being present. Maybe even not present in their body. We'll look at that. A little bit more as we go along. The other interesting thing I find with the dreamer is contrasting with the oral or the endurer or many of the rigid types. What I see around is there are more dreamers still. What I notice working with people a lot, with the orals, with the endurers, I'm not sure about the psychopaths, but the rigid certainly, is that they tend to be a lot mixed up, so that one person tends to have 3 or 4 of the characteristics. They've got characteristics of the oral, they've got characteristics of the endurer, they've got characteristics of various rigid subtypes as well, and maybe little bit the influence of psychopath as well. But what I find with the dreamer is we do seem to still, as a culture, create more people who are really quite strongly in this. They're quite strongly in this. That is my perception. And how do they look? Let's look at appearance and behaviour. An emaciated, malnourished look, a frozen, shocked look in the eyes, very characteristic. Like they're basically in fear. That's the bottom thing. They are quite emaciated, they're malnourished, there's not much to their body, and they're in fear. Their body looks disjointed, like the arms aren't properly fixing at the sockets and the legs aren't properly fixing into the pelvis. Typically you'll see the shoulders pulling up. The classic fear, anxiety position to life, trying to protect ourselves, pulling the shoulders up. It's quite common to have pale skin and for body temperature to be low, particularly at the extremities. I think because there's so little awareness in the body of the dreamer that the body tends to go on to just trying to protect the inner organs by giving the heat to the inner organs, essentially, and by doing so starves the extremities of the body of heat. The chest and throat often appear very constricted around here, holding in a lot. Sometimes it's noted that the feet almost claw to the earth, as though they're trying to cling onto the earth to not leave completely. And the body is highly rigid and armoured. all across the body. You know, there is this kind of slightly spastic, robotic look to the dreamer. It's emaciated kind of robot moving around through life, just really trying to survive, but at the same time attempting on some level to really look as though they're okay, but usually probably not succeeding all that well. Because of the extreme level of armoring, they may be a lot stronger than they look. And like I say, their basic core tendency is to escape into an alternative world. And because of this, they may be very attracted to spiritual belief systems. Because, you know, the normal channels of social connection tend to be a bit shut down. You know, with the schizoid, with the dreamer character, you know, they may have developed other channels such as extreme levels of intuition. They may understand a lot about spiritual things. They may be able to do all sorts of spiritual tasks, or, you know, have spiritual gifts that other people don't have, because that is how they connect. Because when the normal social levels of connection shut down, then other means come in, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because of both the armoring and the lack of awareness in the body, the lack of them occupying their own body, and the desire to make it seem that they're okay on the outside, you know, they tend to have, they're very highly prone to psychosomatic conditions such as panic attacks, nightmares, bursts of sudden rage, you know, and general sleep disturbance. You know, this is because also, you know, stuff like self-mutilating behavior is quite common for the dreamers. This is because on one level they're trying to look normal, but there's this immense kind of cauldron of stuff going on inside. And of course, every now and again it will come out, particularly in sleep. They may hurl their limbs around quite a lot in sleep. Sometimes it's suggested, because with this character type, they are kind of partitioned a bit in their mind, you know, that they have difficulty fitting in with their dress, difficulty kind of, you know, matching the environment, and that there can be a certain spiritual or mental arrogance. Arrogance invariably is a defense condition. You know, it's like it's not natural to be arrogant. It's a defensive posture. When we feel other people are a threat, we create a sort of elevated self-image in our prefrontal cortex. You know, to you know, our inner world is like, we're better than other people. We're better. And underneath that, usually there will be a feeling of being worse than other people, of being really, really shit, and low self-esteem, that kind of thing, which we avoid feeling. Okay, that's a little bit about their appearance and behavior. Let's look at their psychology. Let's look at the psychology. What's really interesting here is, like, as with the orals and the endurers that we looked at earlier, you know, these guys have been subject to very early wounding from the parents or other caregivers, essentially. You know, most orals or endurers in the first year of their life. With the endurers, they've been invaded on a certain level. Usually one or both parents or another caregiver is trying to exert an extreme degree of control over them to block their natural expression totally. And, you know, a child collapses inside, the ego collapses before it's even really formed, and they go through life from this position. With the orals, they've been deprived. They haven't been able to get what they needed in the first year of their life. And that's a withdrawal type wound, as the way I categorize them when we consider trauma psychology. They haven't been able to get what they needed. They wanted someone to be close. They're just not there. And so they live their inner world is very deprived and empty, and they go through life in this sense of deprivation. Now, when we look at this characteristic type, the dreamer, we can see that this wounding is even deeper. It's a withdrawal wound, but even deeper. The traditional explanation is that these guys have not only been kind of abandoned, so to speak, they've been rejected. You know, it's as though the mother in particular did not want them. And this may have been their perception, or something they picked up even in the womb. Because, of course, it could well be the case. Perhaps they were a late child, perhaps they were unwanted, perhaps they were the result of some form of sexual invasion of the mother, you know, a rape or something like this. And, you know, the mother may well have gone through the pregnancy with the underlying belief of not knowing, hey, what can I do with this child? I don't even really want this child that's growing inside of me. And on some level, the child may have picked that up. There's also a suggestion that if a mother doesn't give adequate eye contact to the baby in the first months of its life, they can also pick this up. I don't know how true that is, or whatever. I think the one of the things here is, that the psychologists who worked in this field are trying to distinguish between two different types of withdrawal wound, which I think has validity, the sense of rejection of someone really not wanting you, pushing you away, and the sense of withdrawal of someone not being there. And these guys are in the first of those categories. There is a strong tendency for depersonalization and dissociation. And I mean, to me, those words are essentially the same. But if you talk to dreamers, often what they will relate, to a therapist or even sometimes to other people, is that they often have the experience of being outside their body, almost looking at their body from the outside. The classic experience. The classic experience, of dissociation or depersonalization. Essentially, this is really an absolute trademark kind of trait of the dreamer. Essentially, their inner world will have a lot of anxiety, really deep existential angst. There may be suicidal thoughts a lot of the time. They tend to, as we said, armor the exterior in an attempt to appear calm and to create safety. Their body is frozen in a state of shock. Their energy is frozen in a state of shock. They have a strong sense that it's not really safe to be in the world, safe to be in the body. People who are energy workers would often report that energy does not really flow at the joints. It doesn't really flow at the joint. Something that's been noticed about dreamers, people from this character can be that they may attempt to compensate and become athletic. They may be really good at running. But this disconnection that they have, the fact that they're not really in their body and they're using their body mechanically driven from the mind, shows up in any form of spontaneous behavior, such as having to deal, with being angry suddenly, such as in sex, for example. Areas where they suddenly don't have control are very scary, very, very scary, and they straight away kind of dissociate and go out, Maybe hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is a way to provide safety, really scanning the environment all the time for any perceived sense of threat. There's some suggestion that they're likely to get into abusive relationships. Okay, we've done all the shit bits, the negatives. Let's look at therapy. Let's look at, how someone from this characteristic can move forwards, or how you can support someone like this if you know someone like this in your life. A core thing for these guys, because the primal wound is that they did not feel wanted, is to feel wanted. They need to feel wanted. They need to feel that they belong in society. They need to practice self-love, even if it's simple little things like looking in the mirror and saying, hey, I love myself. I love myself. This is good for anyone anyway. And don't be too quick to diminish the power of these kind of activities. Usually when I suggest this to, for example, sometimes young male people who are seeking support, the idea of looking in the mirror and saying, I love myself, seems a bit sort of, no, I don't want to do that. They're kind of skeptical about it. But that skepticism is coming from the same root as the wound. So be careful not to diminish that. Practicing self-love is important until you've got enough of it inside, or until you're sufficiently open to feel it from the inside anyway, that you don't need to reinforce it mentally. Anything that they can do to trust and learn to feel safe in the world will be supportive to them, So there are trust exercises you can do. There are exercises from behavioral psychology as well, where you slowly learn to move towards what you're fearing, taking it slow enough and breathing and feeling your body so that it isn't a struggle, And so that you do, not really isn't a struggle, sorry, I'm going a little bit on autopilot there. So that they don't feel, the fear doesn't overwhelm them. They don't leave. They stay present with what they're afraid to face, and they stay in their body and slowly move towards it. Because this wound can happen in the womb, rebirthing can be very useful. Other types of breath work likewise, holotropic breath work, for example, Stanislav Grof's thing, can be really, really great. And also grounding is important. I work a lot with the belly and the legs, getting, and the hips and pelvis and the feet. That whole circuit from the belly down through the body out can be really, really great for these guys. Great for all of these character types, basically. All of them are doing something something different with their energy, essentially, that they learn to do in early childhood, that keeps them not fully present in the moment. So, for the schizoids, for the dreamers, as much as anybody, working on grounding and also expanding the breath is useful, but it needs to be taken slowly, you know. With people who have a long history of leaving their body, it's not really very useful for them to do some intense therapeutic path if they just keep leaving their body again. You know, if it's too shocking or too scary, it's better to breathe and feel and slowly move towards what they're afraid of. Expressing anger is useful, like it is for most of these character types. And of course, anything which can enable them to feel, you know, sympathetic touch, gentle touch, supportive touch is very, very useful, particularly for dreamers, because the underlying thing is that they have a tendency to leave. And anything which can reassure them to be in the body, physical contact, sympathetic physical contact is very useful. But once again, of course, you know, it's like it has to be that they feel safe with it. So it may have to go slow. You may have to move slowly towards someone and then take them in your arms, hold them, you know, allow them to feel held, allow them to feel safe. Like all of these characters, you know, it's a journey. It's a journey, but once you start the journey, you should get improvement quite slow, you know, but quite evenly. You know, you start the journey. I didn't mean quite slow in a bad way, but you know, don't be looking for a magic bullet. You know, when you're working on characterology, you're working on the deepest aspects of your personality, you know, and it will be multiple layers of it through the whole psyche. So you might clear something at one level and, you know, at an ego level, you're like, wow, I'm free of that. It'll come back at another level. And that is just what it is. That is just what it is. I have a lot of clients who want a magic bullet. They want, you know, something which can simply take them out of this space and heal them, you know. Come on, Mr. Therapist, heal me. Maybe not quite as overt as that, but that kind of attitude. And, you know, we have to get used to slow, gradual, positive change. That's the only way I know working with the body. And once you're surrendered to that, you know, sometimes every now and again something huge shifts and your whole life moves, but you can't really force that from the level of your ego. Okay, so I hope you found this I was going to say lesson. I don't know if it's really a lesson, you know, this video about the dreamer useful. Remember, if you're in this category or if it's a big part of you, I mean, I've definitely got a part of this in me, you know, no problem, no doubt about it at all. But if you recognize this in you, don't just panic and freak out and this stuff. Just take slow, gentle steps to come back into your body. If you're interested in characterology and how to really work with it practically, because yes, it is useful to understand these characters, and we inevitably reflect on, you know, how much of this character I've got living inside of me. I certainly do, and I think most humans will. But if you want to work practically with exercises, check out Bioenergetics for Journey at bioenergetics.org.uk, because there we will be doing a lot of bioenergetics each week, and you know, we will also cover these different stereotypes and look at how we can create change in their life. Okay, guys, thanks very much for tuning in, and I will see you back soon with the final one in this series of the influencer, or otherwise known as inspirer, leader, or psychopath was the original designation. Fascinating character, so don't miss that. That'll be back with in a few days' time. We're on lockdown here in the UK, so I don't have a lot else to do but sort you with these things. Okay, guys, speak to you again soon.